All right, if you're getting ready for the Queensland Bar, this is for you. We are diving deep into the critical rules for expert evidence under the UCPR. And let me tell you, getting this right isn't just about an exam, it's absolutely fundamental to your entire practice. Okay, let's jump in.
Here's the game plan. We're going to cover 4 key areas. First, the expert's #1 duty. Then, your job as the lawyer. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the report itself. And finally, what happens when things go wrong. Let's get to it.
So, before we even touch the rules, let's start with a really basic question. You know, a witness of fact. They get in the box and they say what they saw, what they heard, right? But experts, well, they get to do something pretty special. They get to give their opinion. And with that incredible privilege comes a huge responsibility.
And this quote from President Safronov just nails it. The key phrase here is positively to assist the court. It's not a passive thing. It's an active duty to help the judge, even if what you have to say doesn't help the person who's paying your bill. This idea is the bedrock for everything we're about to talk about.
So let's see how that principle is actually baked into the rules. We're kicking off with the expert's overriding duty, and for that, we're looking at Rule 429F of the UCPR. And there it is, right there in black and white. An expert's paramount duty is to the court. And notice that word, overrides. It's so important. It overrides their duty to you, to your client, to the person writing the check. This is the golden rule you have to burn into your brain when you're dealing with an expert.
So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, the expert is there to help the judge figure out the tricky stuff. They are absolutely not, I repeat, not a hired gun or an advocate for your side. You can't tell them what opinion to come to, and they have to stick to the Code of Conduct. It's all about that independence.
Now this is where it gets interesting, because there's a really fine line here. Of course an expert is going to be convinced their opinion is the right one. You'd hope so. And as Justice Dobney pointed out in Hobbs v. Oil Drive, that kind of genuine persuasiveness is totally fine. But the moment it tips over into polemic, where they're just fighting for your cause, that's when a court, like in Cannon Hill Investments, might just decide their evidence is unhelpful or worse, unreliable.
Now, this isn't all on the expert's shoulders. Not by a long shot. You, as counsel, are the gatekeeper in all this, and your responsibilities are spelled out very clearly in Rule 429E.
This is your checklist, and it's dead simple, but it is totally non-negotiable. First, the moment you bring an expert on board, you have to give them a copy of the Code of Conduct. Second, you cannot, under any circumstances, tell them what their final opinion should be.
And let's be crystal clear about this. The rule against telling an expert what to think is absolute. There is no wiggle room, no gray area. This rule is there for one reason: to protect the integrity of the whole process and make sure that expert opinion is genuinely independent.
Okay, so we've got the expert's duty and we've got your duty. So let's talk about the main event, the document where it all comes together, the expert report. For this, we're looking at Rules 429G and 429H.
Okay, this is a massive point for Queensland practice and a huge takeaway for you. Under Rule 429G, the expert's report is their evidence in chief. You don't just get to call them to the stand and have a friendly chat where they explain their opinion. No, any oral evidence from them requires the court's leave, and you're not guaranteed to get it. That report has to do all the talking.
So, what has to be in this all-important report? Well, Rule 429H gives you a very specific shopping list. Every time you get a draft report from your expert, you need to be going through it with this list in hand. Are there qualifications in there? Did they list all the facts they relied on? And, most importantly, have they explained the reasons for their opinion? This stuff isn't optional, it's mandatory.
And then, at the very end of the report, the expert has to make these explicit promises. Think of it as their oath, but on paper. They have to state that they've read the code, that the opinions are their own, and crucially, that they get it. They understand and have complied with their duty to the court. It all ties back to that #1 duty we started with.
Okay, which brings us to our final section. What happens when these rules get broken? Because this is all about making sure the evidence the court gets is reliable and has integrity.
I love this quote from Justice Crowe. He's basically saying all those detailed report requirements, they're not just bureaucratic box ticking. They're deliberately designed to be a constant, direct reminder to any expert who might be tempted to be a bit partisan that, hey, your primary duty is to the court. Period.
So what are the stakes here? They are huge.
As we see in Witham v. Hoff, if a report doesn't follow the rules, the court can just refuse to admit it into evidence. Full stop. All that time, all that money, gone. It is a very stark warning about how seriously you need to take this.
And that really leaves us with this one last question. A question you should be asking yourself every time you brief an expert. What is their real role here? The rules could not be clearer. They are not a hired gun you bring in to win the case for you. They are an independent assistant to the court, and your job is to make sure they can be just that. Mastering that distinction, that's key to succeeding at the bar.